The rain began without warning, thin and sharp, the kind that irritates rather than soaks. Ada quickened her steps, heels clicking against the pavement, mind racing ahead of her body. She was late. Late for work. Late for a life she felt was already moving too fast. That was when the woman stepped in front of her. Old, fragile, wrapped in a faded shawl that had once been blue. Her eyes were tired but not desperate. "Please," the woman said softly, her voice nearly swallowed by the rain. "Can you help me?" Ada sighed loudly. She didn't stop walking. "I don't have time for this," she snapped. "I'm already late." The woman stepped aside immediately, but as Ada passed, a voice followed her, quiet, deliberate, impossible to ignore. "Ngozi." Ada stopped. Her mother's name. Ada turned slowly, her heart pounding harder than it should have. "What did you just say?" she asked, her voice sharper than intended. The old woman looked up. Rain traced lines down her face, mixing with something that looked like memory. "Your mother," she said gently. "Ngozi. She once saved my life." Ada laughed, but the sound was hollow. "That's not possible," she replied. "My mother was just a cleaner. She didn't save anyone." The woman didn't argue. "She stopped when everyone else walked past," she said. That was enough. Ada felt something twist inside her chest. Her mother had been many things: poor, tired, overlooked. But a savior? Ada shook her head and turned away again. Yet this time her steps were slower. That night, Ada lay awake staring at the ceiling. Memories surfaced uninvited. Her mother coming home late, her hands rough, her eyes always kind, always tired. Ada had never asked where she went after work, never asked why strangers greeted her warmly, never asked why she sometimes came home smiling despite exhaustion. "Kindness won't feed us," Ada used to say. Ngozi would only smile. Now, the stranger's words echoed in Ada's mind. She stopped. Ada realized something unsettling. Her mother had lived an entire life outside of her daughter's attention, and Ada, in her hurry to escape poverty, had never once slowed down to understand it. 3 days passed before Ada returned to the street. The rain was gone, but guilt had taken its place. She stood where the old woman had stood. The pavement was empty. Panic crept in. What if she was gone? What if that moment had been the only chance? Ada walked further, scanning faces. Then she saw her, sitting outside a shelter, still, patient, as if she had known Ada would come back. The old woman looked up and smiled. "You found me?" she said softly. Ada swallowed. "I shouldn't have walked away," she replied. The woman reached for Ada's hand. "Your mother never did." They sat together on a wooden bench as the old woman spoke. Years ago, she had been homeless, pregnant, weak. Hospitals had turned her away. Security guards chased her from doorways. Then one night, she collapsed outside a hospital gate. Ngozi was cleaning the floors, the woman said. She saw me and stopped. Doctors told her to ignore it. Security told her to move on. Ngozi refused. She said, "If I leave you, I won't sleep again." Ngozi stayed all night, held her hand, prayed quietly. "My child lived because of her," the woman whispered. "He's She only knew she felt responsible in a way she couldn't explain. Late one night, as she balanced her budget, frustration rose in her chest. She thought of turning back. Then she remembered the rain, the hesitation, the name, and she understood something clearly. This wasn't charity, it was inheritance. Even in safety, the old woman struggled to sleep. She woke often, startled by dreams of cold nights and locked gates. Ada would hear movement and come out quietly. "Are you all right?" she'd ask. The old woman would nod, embarrassed. "I'm not used to kindness lasting," she admitted. Those words stayed with Ada. How many people lived expecting help to disappear? How many times had her mother been the only interruption to someone's suffering? Ada began to see the world differently. Pain wasn't always loud. Sometimes it sat quietly, waiting to be noticed. One evening, the old woman spoke again of Ngozi. "It was raining," she said, "just like the night you met me." Ngozi had finished her shift. She was tired. She wanted to go home. But when she saw the woman collapsed outside the hospital gate, she stopped. Security told her to leave it. Doctors said it wasn't her responsibility. Ngozi stayed. She said, "If I walk away, I will carry you with me forever." She stayed until morning. That decision saved 2 lives. Ada felt tears slide down her face. Her mother had never told her this. Ada began to regret all the questions she never asked. Why her mother came home late, why she gave away food, why strangers greeted her warmly. Ada had been too busy escaping poverty to see the quiet heroism beside her. Now, every answer arrived too late. She visited her mother's grave alone. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I should have known." The wind moved softly through the trees. For the first time, Ada didn't feel judged. She felt invited to continue something unfinished. Ada visited the hospital mentioned by the old woman. The building looked newer, but the memories inside were old. She asked about Ngozi. At first, no one remembered. Then a nurse paused. "Ngozi?" she repeated. "The cleaner?" Her face softened. "She used to stop for everyone," the nurse said, "even when it wasn't her job. Others remembered too. Stories surfaced, small acts, big impact. Ada realized her mother had planted seeds everywhere. She had simply never waited to see them grow. That night, Ada sat beside the old woman. "I think my mother brought you to me," Ada said quietly. The woman smiled. "She always believed kindness travels," she replied. Ada nodded slowly. She felt fear, responsibility, purpose, and something else. Clarity. "I don't know where this leads," Ada said, "but I won't stop halfway." The old woman reached for her hand. "That's all your mother ever did," she said. Ada squeezed back, and the journey truly began. The change in Ada did not go unnoticed. She started leaving work early, stopped rushing past people, became quieter, and people noticed. "You're different lately," a colleague said one afternoon. Distracted. Ada forced a smile. At home, expenses grew heavier. Time felt tighter. Some nights, exhaustion pressed against her chest. Helping had consequences. Real ones. For the first time, Ada understood the cost her mother must have carried silently. Ngozi had helped people without applause, without support, without assurance it would ever get easier. Ada stood in the kitchen that night, staring at unpaid bills, and for the first time she whispered, "How did you do this? Without breaking?" One evening, Ada came home drained. The old woman noticed immediately. "You're tired," she said softly. Ada nodded. "I didn't expect it to be this hard," she admitted. The old woman smiled gently. "Kindness is not soft," she said. "It is demanding." She spoke of nights Ngozi went hungry after giving away food, of days she was mocked for caring too much. She was afraid sometimes, the woman said, but she kept going. Ada sat down slowly. Her mother had not been fearless. She had been brave, and there was a difference Ada was only beginning to understand. The letter arrived on an ordinary morning. Plain envelope, official seal. Ada opened it absent-mindedly, then froze. It was from the hospital. They were conducting a review of past community impact. Ngozi's name had surfaced repeatedly. Stories, witnesses, records. They wanted to honor her, publicly. Ada's hands shook. Her mother who never wanted attention, who cleaned quietly, who helped without witnesses. Ada felt conflicting emotions collide. Pride, fear, grief. The old woman watched her carefully. "She deserves to be remembered," she said. Ada nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered. "She does." The idea of standing in front of people terrified Ada. She had spent her life avoiding the spotlight. Her mother had done the same. "What if I can't speak?" Ada asked. "What if I say the wrong thing?" The old woman took her hand. "Your mother spoke with actions," she said. "You will speak with truth." Ada lay awake that night imagining the room. Faces, expectations, memories she had ignored for years. She realized something unsettling. Honoring her mother meant confronting who she used to be and who she had failed to see. Ada visited her childhood home. It was smaller than she remembered. The walls held echoes, her mother's voice, her laughter, her patience. Ada found an old photograph. Ngozi standing beside strangers, smiling softly. Ada had never asked who they were. Now she understood. They were lives, saved quietly. That night, Ada began writing. Not a speech, a confession, of ignorance, of shame, of gratitude. For the first time, she wasn't trying to sound impressive. She was trying to be honest. The hall was full. Ada stood backstage, heart pounding. Her name was announced. As she stepped forward, she saw faces filled with expectation, and faces filled with recognition. "My mother," Ada began, her voice trembling, "was not famous. She was not wealthy." She paused. She was present. Stories followed. One by one, people stood to speak. Each testimony revealed another hidden act. Ada realized her mother had built a legacy without ever knowing the word. The applause was long, but Ada barely heard it. She saw only her mother's smile in her memory, quiet, content. The hospital announced a small foundation in Ngozi's name. Ada felt overwhelmed. This was bigger than her. After the ceremony, strangers approached, each with gratitude, each with tears. The old woman stood at the back, watching. Her eyes glistened. "She would be proud," she said. Ada nodded. For the first time, she believed it. When the applause faded, reality returned quietly. Ada expected life to slow down. It didn't. Letters arrived, emails followed, requests came from people who had heard Ngozi's story and wanted help, guidance, connection. Ada felt overwhelmed. This wasn't what she had planned. Her mother's kindness had opened doors Ada didn't know how to close. Some nights, she sat alone in her living room, staring at the wall, wondering if she was strong enough to carry something this big. The old woman noticed the weight on her shoulders. "Your mother never carried everything alone," she said gently. Ada frowned. "But she never asked for help," she replied. The woman shook her head. She accepted it when it came. As Ada grew busier, the old woman grew quieter. She tired more easily, coughed longer, slept deeper. Ada tried not to worry. But worry arrived anyway. At the clinic, the doctor spoke carefully. "Her body has been through too much," he said. "She is stable, but fragile." Ada sat beside her that night, holding her hand. "I don't want to be a burden," the old woman whispered. Ada swallowed hard. "You are not," she replied firmly. For the first time, Ada understood what it meant to stay, not because it was easy, but because leaving was unthinkable. One quiet evening, the old woman asked Ada to sit. "There's something I never told you," she said. Years ago, after Ngozi helped her, she had wanted to repay her, but Ngozi refused. She said kindness isn't a loan, the woman recalled. It's a gift. The old woman had waited years, hoping to return the favor. "When I met you," she said softly, "I knew my waiting was over." Ada felt tears rise. Her mother's kindness had traveled through time, finding its way back to her, through a stranger. Nothing had been random. Nothing wasted. The old woman passed away one early morning. No struggle, no fear, just quiet breathing that slowly stopped. Ada sat beside her long after. She didn't scream, didn't collapse. She felt still. Grief didn't arrive loudly. It settled. Heavy. Permanent. At the funeral, Ada stood alone. Few people came, but that didn't matter. The woman had lived long enough to finish her story, and Ada had been part of its ending. For weeks, Ada moved slowly. Work felt distant. Noise felt unnecessary. But the foundation continued. People still needed help. Ada realized something important. Stopping now would dishonor both women. So she kept going, not with urgency, with intention. She remembered the old woman's words. Kindness is demanding, but it was also grounding. Every life helped made the loss easier to carry. One evening, as Ada walked home, a young girl stopped her. "Excuse me," the girl said softly. "Can you help me?" Ada froze. For a moment, the world went silent. Rain began to fall. Not heavy, just enough. Ada looked at the girl and smiled. "Yes," she said without hesitation. The circle had begun again. Years passed. The foundation grew slowly, not flashy, not loud, but steady. Ada never forgot where it began. One woman, one decision, one refusal that turned into a return. She visited her mother's grave often. "I understand now," she whispered. Kindness didn't end with Ngozi. It multiplied, through strangers, through choices, through her. And Ada knew, with quiet certainty, that some stories never truly end. They simply choose a new voice. Ada noticed the change one morning while standing at a bus stop. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't checking her phone every second. Instead, she was watching people. An elderly man struggling with a bag, a woman arguing with herself under her breath, a child holding tears back. Before, Ada would have looked away. Now, she noticed, and noticing led to action. She helped without thinking, without calculating time or cost. Later that day, she smiled to herself. This was how it had started with her mother, too. Quietly, almost unnoticed. Ada realized she had crossed an invisible line. She was no longer trying to honor kindness. She was living it. Not everyone welcomed the foundation. Some officials questioned its purpose. Others doubted its sustainability. "Good intentions don't last," one man said dismissively. Ada listened calmly. She had learned patience from watching her mother endure worse. She didn't argue loudly. She didn't plead. She showed results. One family housed, one hospital bill paid, one life steadied. Slowly, resistance softened, not because Ada convinced them, but because kindness left evidence behind. One night, exhaustion overwhelmed her. The calls, the paperwork, the constant need. Ada sat on the floor, back against the wall, and cried. She whispered aloud, "I can't do this forever." Silence answered. Then memory, her mother sitting quietly after a long day, saying nothing, resting just enough to stand again. Ada wiped her face. She didn't need to do this forever. She only needed to do it today. She stood up slowly and continued. At a community center, Ada met a young girl named Zainab, sharp-eyed, guarded, too mature for her age. The girl spoke bluntly. "People help for a while," she said, "then they disappear." Ada felt the words land heavily. "I won't," Ada replied gently. The girl didn't smile, but weeks later she did. Trust returned slowly, just like hope. Ada saw herself reflected there, and understood something important. She wasn't just helping people survive. She was helping them believe again. At a small gathering, someone asked Ada about her mother. Ada spoke. She didn't break down. She didn't choke on words. She smiled. My mother believed stopping mattered, she said. She spoke of Ngozi as a woman who chose presence over comfort. When Ada finished, she felt lighter. Grief had changed shape. It was no longer an ache. It was a foundation. Ada finally understood something her younger self never had. Kindness costs time, energy, sometimes peace. Her mother had paid that price daily, not because she was forced, but because she chose to. Ada accepted the cost without resentment. That acceptance changed everything. Late one evening, Ada stood alone on her balcony. The city hummed below. She placed her hand over her heart and whispered, "I will stop when I'm needed." Not loudly, not dramatically, just truthfully. She didn't know how far this journey would go, but she knew how it began. With a refusal, a name, a return. And Ada was no longer afraid of where it might lead. As the foundation grew, recognition followed. Invitations arrived, interviews were requested. Ada's name began circulating in places her mother had never entered. But success felt heavier than she expected. People praised her generosity without knowing the cost. They saw results, not exhaustion. Impact, not sacrifice. Ada smiled through it all. At night, alone, she wondered if this was how her mother had felt doing good while carrying the weight quietly. One evening, Ada stood before her mirror and barely recognized herself. She looked stronger, but also tired. She realized something then. Growth doesn't remove struggle. It changes its shape. During a panel discussion, a young man asked a simple question. "Why do you do this?" The room fell silent. Ada opened her mouth, then paused. She could talk about charity, about responsibility, about legacy. But the truth felt smaller and deeper. "Because someone once stopped for my mother," she said finally. "And because I almost didn't stop." The audience nodded, but Ada felt exposed. She had admitted her failure publicly, and somehow that honesty mattered more than perfection. That night, Ada dreamed of her mother. Ngozi stood on a quiet road, just as she remembered her, not speaking, just watching. Ada tried to apologize. The words wouldn't come. Ngozi smiled gently instead. She placed a hand on Ada's shoulder and nodded. Ada woke up with tears on her pillow. Not from sadness, from release. She felt forgiven, not by the world, but by the person who mattered most. For the first time, Ada allowed herself to stop. She delegated. She trusted others. She rested. At first, guilt followed her everywhere, but slowly she understood. Burning out wouldn't honor her mother. Continuing wisely would. Ada sat in a quiet park one afternoon, doing nothing, and for the first time in years, she felt peace without pressure. Schools began inviting Ada to speak. Not about money, about noticing. She told students how a single decision could alter lives, how ignoring pain didn't erase it. Young faces listened closely. After one talk, a girl approached her. "I stopped for someone today," she said proudly. Ada smiled. The story was spreading, just like her mother's kindness once had. Quietly, unstoppably. Legacy, Ada realized, wasn't a building. It wasn't a foundation. It was behavior repeated. She watched volunteers help strangers without cameras, without credit, and she saw her mother everywhere. Ngozi hadn't raised Ada to be important. She had raised her to be attentive, and that changed everything. One evening, Ada returned to the street where it all began. The pavement looked ordinary. People rushed past. She stood there quietly and smiled. She had come full circle. But the journey wasn't over, not yet. Something final still waited, a lesson that would tie everything together. Ada felt it in the stillness, and she knew. The story wasn't about her anymore. The rain returned one evening, soft, persistent. Ada stood under a streetlight when she noticed a young girl standing alone nearby. No umbrella, no phone, just waiting. Ada hesitated for only a second before approaching. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. The girl looked up, startled. "I'm waiting for my mother," she said. "She hasn't come." Ada stayed. Minutes passed, then more. Finally, the mother arrived, breathless and grateful. As they walked away, Ada realized something quietly profound. Years ago, she had walked away from someone waiting in the rain. Tonight, she stayed. Not because she was brave, but because she had learned. On her walk home, Ada reflected on how far she'd come. Helping no longer felt like sacrifice. It felt natural. She didn't measure it anymore, didn't calculate loss. She remembered how her mother never announced her kindness. Ngozi never said, "Look what this costs me." She simply acted. Ada smiled softly. She had finally stopped treating kindness as a burden. It was no longer something she gave up. It was something she became. Months later, a letter arrived from a rural town. Inside was a note from a woman Ada didn't recognize. "You don't know me," it read, "but your foundation helped my family when no one else would." The woman explained how one small intervention had saved her child's future. Ada folded the letter carefully. This was how legacy worked. Not loudly, not publicly, but deeply. She placed the letter beside others she had saved. Each one proof that kindness travels farther than intention. Ada returned to her mother's grave at sunset. She knelt quietly. "I think I finally understand," she said softly. She spoke about the people helped, the lives touched, the girl in the rain. "I didn't see it before," Ada admitted, "but I see it now." The wind moved through the trees gently. Ada felt no sadness, only gratitude. Ngozi hadn't lived unnoticed. She had lived unseen. And now, her light was everywhere. Life continued. There were still problems, still suffering, still people in need. Ada no longer felt overwhelmed by it. She understood something essential. She wasn't meant to fix the world. She was meant to stop when she could, and trust that others would do the same. That understanding brought peace. At a workshop, Ada watched volunteers training new helpers, young people, eager, nervous. She shared only one rule. "Don't rush past people," she said. "That's where everything changes." She stepped back and watched them work. And she saw her mother again, not in face, in behavior. The story was continuing, without her leading it. And that was the greatest success of all. Some stories begin with refusal, others end with return. This one did both. Ada once believed kindness was inconvenient. Her mother showed her it was essential. Not every hero is recognized. Not every good deed is remembered. But kindness leaves traces. In people, in choices, in moments when someone decides to stop. The help you refuse today may be the lesson that returns tomorrow. And the help you offer quietly may outlive your name. So slow down. Listen. Stop when it matters. Because sometimes, the greatest legacy is simply choosing not to walk away.